In this week's episode of Studio Inter, we'll be reviewing the matches against Sassuolo and Parma. We'll be previewing the upcoming match against Brescia and Bologna. This week's Moggi, Moratti and Frog. Special guest Carlo Garganese, and much, much more. Everything here on Studio Inter, only on SempreInter.com.
Per De Vrij, c'è la torre per Messina, l'ha presa! L'ha ripresa Messina! L'ha ripresa Messina! Il toro! Il toro! Il toro! Il tiro! Samir! Bandanovic! La recupera Brozovic, andiamo in contropiede, la porta è vuota, tira, attenzione, e gol!
Benvenuti, bentornati to another edition of Studio Inter. I'm your host, Nimatala Iruzzari, wishing you welcome to what has been a very schizophrenic week at Inter, to say the least, as is normal. If Suning and Antonio Conte thought they were going to get the Pazza out of Inter, they sure as hell have failed. But before we get into all of that, let me introduce the panelists. The SempreInter.com preview writer, Mr. Mohammed Nasser.
Hello, everyone.
Good to have you with us. I'm gonna. You're always our resident Mr. Positivity, so I'm really gonna grill you for this because I am not positive. and I saw you lose your faith a little bit last night as well when you tweeted out, "Come on, don't do this to me," or something along those lines. But before we get there, I would like to introduce Mr. Billiam Beckman. Apparently,
no. That was a mistake telling you that anecdote before we came on air.
Absolutely.
That was an old history teacher who called me Billiam. Hello, Nima. I'm not very positive either, so maybe we can have a two-pronged attack on
Good.
I think that video that they made at the start of the season when Conte was asking Steven Zhang to take the Pazza out would be a good time to go back and watch that. It's not aged particularly well.
No, it hasn't. And we're also joined by a special guest. So obviously, when things go to hell for Inter, we have to bring on our resident gobbo, our very good friend, Mr. Carlo Garganese.
Yeah, I mean, you can blame me for this, for these recent poor performances. It was all designed. I had to jinx you. But...
Yes, you have. You keep on going on with this. You're going to win the Scudetto nonsense, and I'm not buying into it because I know you're from Naples, so I know that you're full of all that smorfia and all that shit. So you just put that. And you're a gobbo, so that's what this is all. It's all about, it's all about negative juju juice against Inter. Right. Let's get into it. Carlo, yesterday, the game against Sassuolo is the first one we have to talk about because that was insane. To me, when I was watching that, it really reminded me of Mazzarri's Inter. From the starting lineup with Gagliardini and Borja Valero in the middle of the pitch to Victor. Everything about that, just the way they behaved on the pitch, the instability, this notion that this Inter could concede 19 goals and it wouldn't be that hard. There was no stability. Anything could go wrong, and somehow Inter managed to draw that game in a game where they, to be honest, Sassuolo were better. How did you experience that going into it?
I was surprised because I think that after the restart, I thought Inter were absolutely fantastic against Napoli, just didn't take their chances, and then obviously against Sampdoria, I thought you guys were brilliant in the first half, but then showed signs of tiredness in the second half against a very poor Sampdoria team. So I guess those were the warning signs because Sampdoria really are weak, and you should be blowing them away really. So yeah, I guess the warning signs were there. As you said, very fortunate to get a draw against Sassuolo. And then against Parma, until the closing minutes, hardly created anything. And I think that Antonio Conte, I've said this so many times, for years now, that Antonio Conte doesn't quite know how to manage a team to play every 3 or 4 days. I think that when he can manage a team and prepare them for a whole week for a game, He's the best coach in the world. I truly believe that. The way that he can drill his players and get them ready physically and tactically for a match or one-off match, where he has a whole 7 days. He's brilliant. He's the best. We saw that at Juventus in his first season. We saw that at Chelsea in his first season. We saw that with Italy at Euro 2016 in the opening game against Belgium, and then in the second round game against Spain when they'd rested all their players in the third group game. He's the best. He's brilliant. But when it comes to like playing every 3 or 4 days, he hasn't quite got it. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. I think one is he doesn't like to rotate. And when he does rotate, he probably doesn't rotate the right players, or he doesn't quite get it right. And I think the game against Parma was an example of that, because I think he put too many players who weren't ready and who were probably not up to the level on at the same time. And I think it was a bit suicidal, really, to play D'Ambrosio and Godin at the back against two such quick and, exciting players in Gervinho and Kulusevski, who caused them havoc really all game. And then the midfield as well, with Gagliardini playing again. And they looked weak in the centre of midfield. So yeah, there's the rotational side of things. But I think also maybe the most important thing is that Conte really only has kind of one way of playing in terms of, the intensity and in terms of beating teams through that side of that way of playing. And that's just not possible playing in that way with that intensity, every 3 or 4 days, especially when he trains like that as well. I mean, anybody will tell you that Conte teams train like crazy. And I just think that he maybe needs to find a different way of playing. I still don't think that Inter keep the ball well enough. And that's been an issue with Juventus, with Conte teams over the years. Even the great Juventus midfield, when they had Vidal, Pirlo and Pogba, which was probably the best midfield in Europe, in terms of player for player. But even that midfield didn't keep the ball very well, and often would get dominated in the centre of midfield by weaker midfields, because it's just the way that Conte manages his team, that they don't keep the ball that way. They're more direct. So I think it's I think Conte definitely does have to take some of the blame for what we've seen in the last kind of week.
Mo, did you have a question for Carlo?
Yeah, I mean, look, Carlo, I wanted to ask, in general, the same question I asked Patrick last week. I feel like, the points don't lie. The 28th week, match week, this is the highest points tally that any Inter has compiled since 2008, 2009, I believe. Not even Mourinho in 09-10. 09-10 had as many points by the 28th week. Is this a case of maybe we're just so scarred by what's happened as Interisti, of course, so scarred by what's happened in the last few years in terms of disappointment, that we're just blinded by the fact that sometimes you just have off games, and sometimes the team is not fit, and sometimes you've got two starting creative carry the ball midfielders out injured, and a fast center back suspended. Is this a case of it being a chronic failure, in your opinion, or is this just a convergence of unfortunate circumstances which are a result of the very peculiar situation that the season is in at the moment? What do you reckon? Or maybe it's a bit of both.
Yeah, probably a bit of everything, really. A bit of what I talked about, a bit of what you've just mentioned. It's not a disaster, the situation Inter are in. I think everybody knew this was Antonio Conte's first season with Inter, and that he will be judged on how Inter do next season. If Inter are in the same situation next season, in fact, I would go as far as say that if Inter don't win the Scudetto next season, then you can start talking about chronic failure, and the fact that they haven't achieved what they should be achieving. So I don't think it's a time to panic. I think it's a time for them to stick together. We've already seen this week that Inter are signing Hakimi from I was going to say Dortmund, but it's from Real Madrid. And pretty much, if you look at the market of the players that can possibly be signed for that right wing back position that Inter desperately need to strengthen in, he's pretty much the best you can get on the market, and at such a good price as well. So no pandemic or no pandemic, that's a great price. So Inter are definitely strengthening. I mean, I think the club are doing wonders on the market in terms of team building. You can't fault them. The team building, it's you've seen block by block, it's been put there in order to win. So it's just about carrying that through, really. I've maintained all along, it's something that me and Nimra have argued about. I maintain all along that this season was there for the taking. It hasn't. I mean, it's not over yet. 8 points. There's still 10 games to go. It looks like a slim chance that Inter can win the Scudetto this season, but it's not totally over. But it's not a disaster. I think it's next season where we really need to judge Conte and this Inter project.
Yeah, agreed.
Did you have a follow-up question, Mo, or did you?
No. I just I mean, I'm glad that we're talking about more ambitious targets for next season. I think all the pressure should be on the coaching staff and Conte in particular to deliver the goods next season. But I do agree with you that I think this season it is a bit premature to be asking so much in such a transitional period for the club, both in terms of players, management, organizational structure, etc. But
you don't win titles with Danilo D'Ambrosio, Ashley Young, Antonio Conte, and Antonio Candreva, and Victor Moses as your wing back in 2020. I'm sorry, it's just this isn't as much as you want to blame Conte for these are the players he handpicked. He's not responsible for Victor Moses coming in January. He's not responsible for Ashley Young being pulled out of a retirement home in Old Trafford and dragged to Milan. Like, let's be honest. I mean, these are, he wanted them because he wants intensity on the wings. But at the end of the day, the club is in its financial situation. It's doing the best it can. Beppe Marotta has, I mean, to me, that is the most important signing Inter have done in decades. Beppe Marotta, the fact, so for me, this is a work in progress. And you and I, Mo, were always saying that this nonsense of Scudetto, it is nonsense this season. I understand what Carlo means, that the season is there for the taking, because Juventus have not been the Juve of old. And I agree to a certain extent that they were there for the taking. But
really, they also have been.
Yeah, no, but really,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I know. What I'm saying is that they have been there for the taking, absolutely. But and they have been looking, they've not been the Juve of old, and absolutely, there's been a chance for someone to take them. But Inter aren't that team this year, and they weren't that team, and we both said that because in the beginning of the season that this Inter isn't ready. It's next year that it is. But having said that, looking at Juventus central midfield next season, it's Artur 23, Bentancur 23, and Dejan Kulusevski 20. So Juve have improved. So it's not an issue of, if Juve had been static and still playing Khedira and Matuidi, we could have a different discussion. But they're not going to. They're going to stay strengthened really. And so
Khedira is static. Trust me, he's very static.
No, I mean he is static. Yeah. No, but let's gone off the rails already after 10 minutes. Right. I'm going to hand you over to Billiam so he can keep us steady. Keep the ship steady.
Steering us back onto the straight and narrow. Actually, my two questions that I kind of had floating in my head have sort of already been answered. So instead, Carlo, I'll pick your brains on two players who've disappointed a little in the last couple of games, or rather Eriksen and Lukaku. What have you made of Eriksen since the lockdown? Because I'm a little confused, having seen him play so well against Napoli and Samp, and then sort of disappear a little in the last two matches. And as far as Lukaku is concerned, he's playing every week at the moment because Inter don't have an obvious replacement on the bench, and he did that for most of the season before the lockdown. So do you think him potentially running out of steam is going to be an issue for the last few weeks of the season? Because I thought he looked a little tired yesterday against Parma.
Yeah, I think with Lukaku, I think it's come down to tiredness. I mean, he's played pretty much. He might have even played every game for Inter. I can't remember a game he hasn't played for Inter this season.
Patrick Kenjica, who's sometimes of this parish, was doing a commentary for the World Feed yesterday, and he said that Lukaku had started 27 out of 28 games in the league. So I don't know about the Champions League and the Cup, but that's pretty much every match in the league.
I think he has played in every single Serie A match. So I think he might have come on in the game that he didn't play. He didn't start, but he's pretty much played every game anyway. So it's inevitable that he's going to tire, and like Nimmer was saying before as well, I think probably Inter are paying the price for their lack of attackers. I mean, the only alternative in attack is Alexis Sanchez, who, let's be honest, nowadays is no more than just a 20 minutes, little short burst at the end of the game. That's all he can really offer. Now, and the first half of the season, I guess there was Politano, not really his kind of role, but at least that was another body. So Inter kind of are short up front. So I think that explains it for Lukaku. I guess a little bit of a concern that with so many games coming up, and especially as that he's not getting any help at the moment from Lautaro, who I think is the bigger concern right now than Lukaku, because I mean he scored one goal in his last 9 games, and even before the lockdown, he was looking distracted. Really, I think there's no doubt about it that Barcelona interest has affected him. So he needs to get back on it really. As for who was the other player that you mentioned? Oh, Eriksen, sorry, yeah. So Eriksen, yeah, I'm like you. I'm completely confused because he was obviously struggled before the lockdown because they kind of couldn't find a role for him. And Antonio Conte, even said that the best thing to come out of this whole lockdown was that he had time to work tactically to find a role in the team for Eriksen, and it looked like it worked wonders in those first 2 matches against Napoli, where he was really involved, lots and lots of shots and efforts, and he scored. And the same again in the next game against Sampdoria, and then it's just like he's just totally collapsed these last 2 games. It can't be a physical reason. It's really hard to put your finger on it. I mean, what I would say about Eriksen is I think he's the kind of player who you need to be kind of dominating territory to get the best out of him. So that would involve obviously Inter playing more of the game in the opposition half, and him and Eriksen getting lots of touches and feeling the game. Getting the ball in from the midfield and then playing 1-2s with an attacker like he did for the goal. For Lukaku's goal against Sampdoria, which was a really great move, that's where he's at his best, getting lots of touches. And maybe in the last 2 games, because Inter as a team have been a bit tired, it's been maybe the game's been a bit more stretched at times, and he hasn't been able to really, he's not a player that's very good with the game is stretched. So I don't know, maybe that explains it, but you'd expect more from him. He has definitely been the biggest. He probably has been the biggest disappointment of these last 2 matches because there's really very little excuse for it, really.
Yeah, I mean, there was always a sort of an assumption or a criticism levied at him when he was at Tottenham that he would, he'd float through games sometimes and wouldn't always be at his influential best every week. Perhaps sometimes limiting himself to good free kicks and dead ball situations. So maybe that's just the downside of a fantastic player. But I suppose we'll see as time continues whether this is just a week off or whether there's something more concerning.
I would like to, I'm sure the digital match analysis tools these days are pretty thorough in picking up stuff. But I'd like to see if there's a correlation between, let's say, like the heat maps of the attackers in front of him and the wing backs in spaces versus the impact that Eriksen has, because maybe it's just a factor of him, like you said, Carlo. It's a factor of the fact that for the most part, when out of possession, Parma were really locked down, whereas in the first half in particular against Samp, they were all over the place and there were all these spaces left and people were attacking the spaces, running in channels, etc. But maybe it's just a factor of the way teams have lined up. And honestly, I thought like the playbook to frustrating Conte was written by De Zerbi in the Sassuolo match, and D'Aversa basically took that, mimic that setup completely. Sit back, stretch the play against Inter in Inter's defensive third, play with the attacking wide people very quickly, etc. And I reckon maybe Eriksen is struggling, or the team as a whole is struggling when attacking a team that's so well formed defensively, well shaped defensively, and well disciplined. And like you said, Conte seems to have this single path towards defeating the opposition, and maybe it's time to be able to utilize a little bit more creativity in trying to break these teams down. But I look at the fixture list, and I think the two brightest provincial teams were Sassuolo and Parma, and I hope the rest of the provincial fixture list doesn't trouble us as much as these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, one of the I'm listening to you guys talk about the Eriksen thing, and the thing is, what's his name? Fabio Ravezzani said something today that I found really interesting, and he's saying that Eriksen doesn't offer anything defensively, so you need to have two central midfielders behind him to clean up. A half-injured Barella and Nicolo Gagliardini or Borja Valero clearly aren't up to the task, and I wonder, will this look much better when you have Marcelo Brozovic, who clearly never stops running when it comes to distance covered and lungs of steel. He's one of the best in the Serie A, together with Barella and Kulusevski. But I mean, just because we were having this discussion the other week, I mean, will we even need Brozovic with Eriksen on the pitch? And I'd say, yeah, I think we do. I think with someone like, with Brozovic's read of the game and his stamina and ability to cover spaces that are blind, it's been quite evident that he is very much missed at this Inter. Do you guys agree with that, Carlo?
Brozovic, yeah, I think we've seen. Yeah, I think also from a point of view of just having a director like a regista. I mean, I'm not sure you would really call Brozovic a classic regista, but just someone that can direct the play and also get the right kind of balls into someone like an Eriksen, which is so important. And we've seen that if Eriksen gets the ball in the right positions, he can do damage. So maybe that has worked against him in these last two games as well. I think Brozovic definitely has.
Something else that I've been thinking about
the players, the backups.
Yes, something else that I've been thinking about is, I think if you're going to play with Eriksen as your number 10 player, man, do you need Sandro Tonali on that pitch behind him, because he's not a regista. To me, Tonali is a classic mezzala, and he's a box-to-box kind of player. With him and Barella, then you have the football IQ and physique, and to cover the hole that Eriksen leaves behind him, because he really does leave a hole big enough for a tank to drive through behind him. And I think that he should. I mean, that's not criticism against him. I think his strengths are in the final third. Let him do that. I'm not one of these. I don't believe in this kind of, this ridiculous that some people in football have this. No, everyone should defend and everyone should attack, and that's no. Right man at the right place. And if Eriksen's strength is in the final third, then let him do that. So I think that for me, aside from Hakimi, Tonali to me is really so important for Inter to get right now. What do you think about that? What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he'll be a fantastic signing. I said within the first 10 minutes of seeing him, I thought that he has everything to be a generational player. He really is that talented, and I think he'll be an incredible buy. And he like you said, he has the technical bit. He's a very complete player, but from a technical point of view, he has that ability to link up and be on the same wavelength as someone like Eriksen, and that will help so much to get Eriksen to the level that he needs to be at. The only other thing I would add on Eriksen is, and I think this is another weakness of Conte that we've seen throughout his career, is that, and it's more with the formation, is that with Conte's kind of 3-5-2, I know this is more of a 3-4-1-2 formation, there can sometimes be quite a big gap between each department, so between the defence and the midfield, and then the midfield and the attack. And I don't think that helps someone like Eriksen, because also the wing backs being quite spread out. It's not that everyone's not so close together that he can have that kind of play that short passing game, which Eriksen kind of is very good at. So I wonder whether that kind of works against someone like Eriksen, that feeling of having players close to him all the time.
Yeah, can I just say something to that point
sure.
as well, if I may? Yeah, honestly, we've been criticizing Skriniar all season long because his defensive performances have not been, totally for everyone to see, have not been as. He's not a catastrophe, he's not a calamity at all, but he's not as amazingly impressive and impervious as he was last season defensively. But what we saw yesterday, for sure, is that, to Carlo's point, with Skriniar and Bastoni on the field, these two players are so savvy on the ball. Of course, De Vrij's passing, is never in doubt, but the technical ability and the attacking mindedness of Skriniar and Bastoni is such that I think the whole team as a whole plays offensively so much better, as we saw, of course, when Bastoni was subbed on for Godin. But the whole team, the lines are so much closer when in possession. The team is so much more adventurous going forward. The ball is carried forward across the lines much more effectively with defensive contribution of these guys. So I think as a whole, we just might be going around in circles around the core point, which is this squad is incomplete and requires depth. And I think the starting 11, when fully fit, is pretty impressive and does very, very well for the most part. But unfortunately, the replacements, whether it's an aging Godin, or let's not get started on poor Ranocchia or D'Ambrosio, and so it really is a matter of the fact that the squad is very shallow, and when everyone
This has been the problem for the past 10 years, and we all know this. And strides have been taken in the right direction, but we're far from there yet. And the fact that we've gone 25 minutes without even talking about Gagliardini missing open goal from 1 meter is beyond me. And I want to talk because I can't. That is the worst miss I have seen in my life. I've never seen anything like it, honestly. And I want to hear you. You tweeted something at me, Carlo, about who was it in Liverpool in the 80s? I still think this is worse.
Ronnie Rosenthal. Yeah, it was Ronnie Rosenthal. I think it was 1992. It's kind of widely regarded as the worst miss in Premier League history.
This is worse.
I'm not sure if it was the season before the Premier League was formed. I think it was 1992.
I think it was the first season of the Premier League. So 92-93 at Villa, I think.
Yeah, it was 92. I wasn't sure what part of the year it was. But yeah, it's kind of widely regarded as the worst miss in English football history. But yeah.
No, this is worse. This is worse because he can at least blame that someone's moving. There is no one there. It's literally like he should get a. I mean, how? I still don't. I will never understand that. I will never understand. And I think, to be honest, to be fair play to him, I think he took it really well. I mean, because he's been absolutely rinsed. And what he did today about what was it he put out on Instagram and Twitter saying that whoever hits him the hardest on social media, he'll donate the Sassuolo the jersey he wore for the Sassuolo game to him because he doesn't want to see it ever again. And I think that's the way you got to do it. But wow, I mean, do you guys think this is the worst miss, or can you think of any worse miss than this?
Well, it's been an interesting week because we've had.
Sorry.
No, you go, Mo.
Yeah, Mo, you go.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, it's been a very bad...
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a delay which is causing a problem.
Right. I'm going to say...
Nemo, decide for us.
Yes. Mo, go.
All right. I'm sorry, Will. But I have a pretty obscure miss. It was an Egypt World Cup qualifier, and there's a running jinx amongst Egyptians on how we don't qualify for the World Cup. And one of those was a pivotal game against Libya away, and our left wing back was literally 1 yard away from the goal, 1 yard, and we had to win the match. And he managed not to hit the crossbar. He just completely missed the target from a yard away. It was infinitely more difficult to do what he did than to actually score. And that I wish I could find. I tried to look for a GIF of that miss when you had tweeted. Or retweeted Carlo's tweet, but I couldn't find it. But that was one of the most ridiculous misses I've ever in the history of misses. You know, it's really, really, really obscene.
Will, you what was yours?
I was gonna be slightly more mainstream than Egypt's past World Cup qualifying campaigns and say that it's been a week of bad misses in Italy. We had quite a few that I saw the last few. I saw Valerio Verre for Verona had a terrible miss from pretty much on the goal line the day before the Sassuolo game when they were playing Napoli. And then you had, I think Bernardeschi had a pretty bad miss as well against Lecce on a few days ago as well. So there's something about an open goal which has clearly lost appeal to footballers this week because no one seems to want to score in these last few days with a goal gaping. But in terms of worst of all time, you've caught me on the hop. I would have to think about that for a while. But it's certainly the worst I've seen in European football this season because, as you said, there is no one there. You know, with Ronnie Rosenthal, he's running round the keeper and is sort of maybe not on balance, and he's not right next to the goal. He's a little bit further away than Gagliardini. When the miss happened, I thought maybe that one of Consigli's arms had sort of blocked his shot, and that might have put him off. But you can see quite clearly from the replay that his arm is not in the way, and it really is just it should be a tap in, and somehow he's conspired to win the crossbar challenge, shall we say, to try and put a positive spin on it. It would have been much more at home in that kind of competition. But yeah, I think it just goes back to what we were saying before. You know, this is a team that has 13 good starters, and you need 18 really if you're going to compete for the league. That's what Juventus have always had down the years. You know, you need to be able to make 6 changes to a starting 11 and for there to not be any difference in the quality. And we can't do that at the moment. When you make 6 changes with this squad, you take a risk, which is what happened in midweek. So that it's not something that can be solved very easily. But you know, when you see misses like that, you realise maybe a little bit more about why behind Lukaku and Lautaro there's no one else who scored more than 3 goals this season.
I mean, the thing that really gets me is with the Sassuolo game is that there is no moderation with Antonio Conte. When we were playing in the Champions League, it was as if it was against the law for him to make more than 1-2 changes when we were playing every 3 days in the Champions League and Serie A. And his biggest complaint was about we've bought players from Sassuolo and Cagliari. Now we interplay 2 games in 14 days and then play Sassuolo and he makes 6-7 changes. It's like there's no moderation. Why not? You know, it's either everything or nothing with him. And when you have him do stuff like that, then you need to have 22, 23 players of equal quality in order for this to work. Like Carlo was talking about earlier, that he gets it wrong. When he gets it wrong, he gets it so wrong. And that drives me a bit mad. And another thing of that is a little bit of a square peg round hole discussion. Why was Diego Godin playing to the left of the back three? When in this galaxy has Diego Godin ever done well playing in like a wing back positions, or so that we suddenly, after 2-3 months of him struggling, on top of a season where he struggled, we put him on the left, one of the most right-footed players in the history of the game. I mean, to me, that was just why not play Danilo D'Ambrosio there, who has an experience of actually being a fullback and on both sides, and play Godin to the right, where he's, you know, although he struggled, at least it's some sort of familiarity. That's, you know, that's another thing that was driving me mad. And one thing, and the final thing is, I don't know if Diego Godin is past it or not. And I wanted to ask you guys if you think it. I don't know if you think he's finished. Clearly he's past his peak. But when I read that signing, I was convinced that he was being bought for that central position in the back three, not to play on one of the sides, where you need to have some players that either are fast or B, know how to read the game really well and have a great explosiveness to their game, like Skriniar. What are your thoughts, Carlo?
Well, is he finished? I mean, the way that Gervinho went past him like he was, you know, peak Thierry Henry. It was, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is, gosh, you know, this guy's career is over. And it was, to be honest, it was quite sad to see him yesterday. And like you said, he was stuck out on the left, and he just he looked like an old man. He really did. In his defence, I would say that at this stage of his career, and having played so many years Atletico Madrid in a four-man back line, so playing in a two-man centre-back pairing for a team that defends very, very deep.
Yes.
You know, everyone has seen Atletico Madrid under Diego Simeone. I mean, a lot of games, even against smaller teams, they just play in their penalty area. So he never had to be mobile. He just had to defend his penalty box, and he's been, you know, one of the best defenders of his generation at doing that. And the same with Uruguay. I mean, Uruguay as well play very, you know, they play Simeone football, really. Uruguay, you know, very sure. kick everything that moves, and you know, defend very deep, and so it's kind of like he's moved to Inter, and not that Inter play with a particularly high line, but he's come in, and it's just been at this stage of his career to suddenly move to a three-man defence, and I do think he has played in a three-man backline with Uruguay earlier in his career, but to suddenly change from everything that he's been doing at Atletico, to suddenly, you know, change to a three-man backline, and then get exposed the way that Inter have, because he's had defenders with him who are not particularly quick as well. I mean, Skriniar, I wouldn't say he's lightning fast. I mean, he's got a bit of pace, but he's not lightning fast. De Vrij is not quick at all. Bastoni, I don't think is massively quick. You know, and then obviously the backups are certainly not. And we've seen this season that Inter have really been destroyed on the counter-attack. They've been so susceptible to counters this season, Inter. So I think it's just that's in his defence. I think he's been just, you know, he's been thrown into something that, you know, he's just not ready for, and at this stage of his career, it's too late for him to adapt to. But, you know, at the end of the day, he is 34, and, you know, he doesn't seem to have the legs anymore, to be honest.
Will?
I would say that the Godin has not been helped, obviously, by the position, because, as you said, it would have been more comfortable for him to play in the middle of a back three. But because De Vrij obviously had experience of doing that so well at Lazio, I suppose that's why Antonio Conte wants to play with De Vrij, and also because De Vrij was a very important part of this team already before he arrived. So don't do anything to unsettle his excellent form. But the other thing with Godin is, as Carlo was just saying, there's been a huge problem with what, you know, they call negative transitions. You know, when we're caught on the counter attack, and that is not just a problem of the back three. You know, there is a huge problem with the midfield filter in this team, and it's really heightened when Brozovic is not there. And you saw it in that game against Sassuolo particularly, and also against Parma at the weekend, that Inter concede so many chances and goals from central moves. The first goal against Sassuolo, there's like a whole no man's land of space between for Sassuolo to advance into and to score, and it just took me back to that poem that was written in the war that says, things fall apart, the centre cannot hold, and that's the problem. This team is there's such a I can't think of a chasm, I suppose, of space, and that doesn't help if you're 34 years old. You're playing slightly out of position. I mean, everyone piled in on Gagliardini for his miss, but where was he going for Sassuolo's first goal? There was already two players that were sort of trying to mark whoever was on the ball now, but he was sort of there in the middle of nowhere, and the man that he was supposed to be marking was meters away and had all the space in the world to advance. So that's maybe the more concerning thing if you want to look at that a freakish miss that's probably never going to happen again in his career. So I think it's a combination of factors, but to take it back to Godin, he's certainly not been put in the best possible conditions to succeed in the twilight years of his career. So I do have some sympathy with him. I wouldn't say that he needs to definitely be sort of shifted out, because if one of this team's problems is sort of the ability to see out games, to be wise and to know how to win things, I think we can clearly say that is a problem after what we've seen in the last couple of games. He's probably a good presence in the dressing room. I mean, we can't really know that without being inside, but he's the kind of person that Inter need in order to return to their former glories, even if he may not be any longer the kind of player. But again, that's not something really we can comment on.
I'd rather have Diego Godin in the Ranocchia role at this Inter than have Andrea Ranocchia in the Inter squad. I mean, it's just, I have had enough. A decade. I can't remember who it was who called Ranocchia, Gagliardini, Danilo D'Ambrosio, Antonio Candreva, called them coach killers. How many careers have these guys coaches' careers at Inter have these guys killed? I mean, it's enough already. Get them out. They're probably lovely, amazing, brilliant people lovely human beings, but it's not a social club, is it? It's team to win football games, and they're not good enough. It's this that drives me crazy. How have we extended Andrea Ranocchia's contract twice this past decade? Like that doesn't make sense to me. How has this been done?
I was just going to say, we've played 17 games in the year 2020 so far. Do you know how many clean sheets we've kept? This is all competitions, by the way, not just the league.
2.
Yeah. And one of them was against Ludogorets. So,
that doesn't count.
Yeah, so the other one for clarity was away at Udinese when we won 2-0. But this was the best defence in the league at the start of the year, and you see it on Sunday, and you think, how was that the same season as this? It's so easy to get in and have shots and take chances and score goals against this team now. I mean, the Sassuolo's third goal as well was incredibly soft from last week when Magnani went in and scored. We're now making players like Magnani scored. Giangiacomo Magnani hadn't scored since Siracusa Paganese in November 2017. Before this, that was in Serie A, and he's coming in and off the bench and tapping in from a yard out. It's remarkable that
that's impressive knowledge. That is.
I saw it on Twitter. I didn't know that. It was, I can't claim that one. Although that has just reminded me of another tweet that was quite amusing. There was, a bastone is a walking stick in Italian, and someone said that after Moses crossed for Bastoni yesterday, well, Moses and Bastoni have been a winning partnership for thousands of years. And they put a picture of Moses holding a walking stick, and sort of with his arms held aloft, which is a nice sort of
brilliant
play on words.
You have to send that to me. That's absolutely brilliant. Yes,
but it is remarkable. This team it's not a Conte defense, is it? And when I say defense, I don't just mean the back three. I mean the defensive phase, as we always say. It's such a mishmash though. And it only takes a Brozovic injury and a Vecino injury, and suddenly everything seems very panicky and unreliable. And it wasn't ideal, certainly, that for the Parma match, Conte changed all 3 members of his back 3 following the Sassuolo game. That's always a risk when you're already struggling defensively.
But see, this is what I mean. And then he puts Godin to the left, the most right-footed player in the world. He puts him to the left of that back 3. And anyone knows if you play with a back 3, you need to have those 2 who plays on the either side of that player in the middle needs to be quick. Or like Skriniar, who isn't lightning quick, or he's not quick at all. But what his strength is his explosiveness and his read of the game that allows him to be one step ahead. Diego Godin has never had that. He's never been that. And I don't understand this. Again, this is square peg round hole thing. And Conte does this where he thinks that his stubbornness that has won him everything else in life will go through this. And no, it won't. It'll just get you sacked. And I know that because I've seen, we've watched this movie before. We know what happens when you play Danilo D'Ambrosio and Gagliardini. It ends up with you not working for the next 2 years.
It is unusual and surprising how bad Inter's defence has been, or how many goals Inter have been conceding for an Antonio Conte team. Because we've seen throughout his career that he always builds his teams first and foremost around a strong defence and solidity. And, we just haven't seen that with Inter. They have looked like they're always going to concede. They look very vulnerable on their counter-attack. I do think that a lot of their defenders, with the exception of De Vrij, are not suited to a 3-man defence. Maybe Bastoni as well.
Absolutely.
But I do think that that's a big problem. Godin, we've already agreed.
Exactly why.
Skriniar. Yes, Skriniar is not for me. Skriniar looks uncomfortable in a 3-man defence, whether he's on the right or the left. I think he's uncomfortable when he has to move out of that central zone and cover, say, to the right or to the left if a player's run into him. He looks uncomfortable. He doesn't move very well laterally. For me, he doesn't turn very well. He needs to feel as if he's next to someone and defend his zonal area.
This is exactly why, precisely the very reason why I was on this show and I told all of you guys that I did not want Antonio Conte, because for me, Skriniar is patrimonio dell'Inter. He's the future of Inter. He's the future captain. And this was what I was worried about. I cannot see him working in a back 3. Now, the fact that he's a fighter and doesn't want to give up and he wants to stay at Inter and he wants to win with Inter, that's the reason it's worked kind of when he's played to the right of that back 3. But other than that, yes, this is precisely it. This is why I didn't want Conte. And I'm really, really worried now that Inter are going to sell Milan Skriniar to buy in someone like Kumbula or someone else who works in a back 3 to suit Antonio Conte. So, what? Yeah.
We're going to buy Armando Izzo and get rid of Skriniar.
Yeah,
that's how we solve it.
Exactly. No, but you know what I mean? No, this is exactly what I'm fearing, because this is what this is what scares me. That you sell Skriniar, you do something stupid, Interi, and sell Skriniar for 3 beans and a packet of cigarettes to Real Madrid, and you replace him with Armando Izzo. You know what I mean? Like, this is Campagnaro, but with a sleazier hairdo. I mean, this is it just drives me mad.
I hope he can adapt. I mean, I would have said that Andrea Barzagli is sort of similar to Skriniar. Yeah, he did adapt to that right centre back role, and I wouldn't have had him down stylistically as someone that would be perfect for a 3-man backline. But he did in the end. So, I wouldn't write him off, but he does always strike me as being uncomfortable. But the one thing I would like to ask you guys is there a lack of pace in the Inter team, a lack of speed? Because there's definitely a lack of speed in the defence. There definitely is a lack of speed on the wing-back roles. So I do.
In the wing-back roles, there's a lack of IQ. There's a lack of quality. There's a lack of speed. There's a lack of. I mean, what do you think?
If we're going to talk about dodgy wing-backs, we should probably pay homage to Ashley Young's 12-minute cameo against Sassuolo. He came should have given away a penalty for a handball, was then caught offside in a very promising position, and then gave away the penalty for Sassuolo's equaliser, which bizarrely was in exactly the same spot as the one that Inter got their penalty for 45 minutes ago. That's just a coincidence.
It's called the David Luiz. It's called the David Luiz hat-trick.
No, that's no. It was, to me, that was the best imitation of Suli Montari since 2010 that I have seen anyone do. What the hell was that? I mean, Jesus.
I would say that, with the pace issue, there's certainly an issue of pace when you're playing Gagliardini and Borcavalero in midfield. I mean, the first half against Sassuolo was really, really slow, even for this kind of post-lockdown world where everyone's a little bit rusty and you haven't got the crowd to push you on. There was so many touches on the ball, and it was just giving Sassuolo all the time in the world to organise themselves and reposition. Borca would get the ball and then sort of take a few touches and then turn back and pass it back to Ranocchia. I think he was in the centre of the defence. It's so difficult to get a game going when that happens. And the thing that was positive about the Samp game, to flip it on its head, was that for once we played fast, incisive football, and Brozovic wasn't there to give us that tempo. And that suggested, and that's what led us on to the whole, do you need Brozovic if you've got Eriksen sort of debate. Yeah. Which hasn't aged tremendously well, with a couple of weeks, at a distance of a couple of weeks. So yeah, there is an issue. But I still think if you have Brozovic fit, if you have, dare I say it, the footballer formerly known as Stefano Sensi fit, you'd have a lot more pace in that midfield. Barella's kind of going up and down, but he's normally good for that kind of thing as well. But I thought he was quite lackluster against Parma. So yeah, there's definitely an issue, and it just sort of underlines how difficult it is to play that wing back position, because there were, again, I was watching that Sassuolo game, and Conte he plays his teams with kind of a 3-2-5 when they're attacking. The wing backs are so far up the pitch, which in turn obviously causes problems for defenders who aren't comfortable playing on a wide side of a back three, such as Godin and Skriniar. But that's another debate. So yeah, there's definitely an issue with pace, but when you play like that, you're always going to have an issue of pace, because eventually everyone's going to get run into the ground, even if they are quick. So,
yeah. It's gotten to the point where you can literally start setting your watch against what changes Antonio Conte is going to do and when he's going to do them. 70th minute, wing backs.
I thought it was really lovely tribute that Stellini didn't make those changes either before the 70th minute. It's almost as if he thought he was scared he'd be told off by Conte if he went against his kind of custom of waiting until minute 70. Because I tell you, it was minute 69. Yeah, Sanchez came for Eriksen, so he's broken the rules a little bit. He's dipped into the 60s, but
living on the edge.
Just a slight rebellion, like when you don't undo your top button at school. Just a tiny rebellion that can't be protected.
Right, let's move on. We're playing Brescia and Bologna. Brescia interplay Brescia at home on Wednesday, and Brescia are awful. There's really nothing.
Crap.
They are absolutely awful.
And they have a crap manager.
Yes.
You know what? Inter can play Ranocchia, Godin, D'Ambrosio at the back.
Up.
They can bring Kuzmanovic. They can bring
an owl I can see out the window.
They can bring back Kuzmanovic. They can bring back Jonathan. They can bring back Gresco. They can bring back all your stars. Yeah.
Oh.
And they'll still beat Brescia.
I hope.
Don't jinx it. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
I know what you're doing. Stop doing that. No, Mo, help me out here. The Gobbo's gone crazy.
Listen.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where it's no amount of black magic and
yeah, honestly, you don't need Luis Figo to run over a cat, a black cat to make sure you win, like he infamously did, or allegedly. Don't want him to sue me, because he threatened to sue Libero newspaper after it was the penultimate game of the season in the 2007-2008 season, and Inter got 3 games with 3 games left of the season. Inter were I think 6 points clear. So they were romping to the title, and then they lost a game, and then they drew a game, and they were only 1 point ahead going into the last game, and everyone was panicking. What's going on? The Inter squad blamed it on this stray black cat that was had been seen regularly, around the grounds, in and around the grounds of the training ground at Appiano Gentile, and there was a story on Libero newspaper that Figo took his SUV and run it over and killed it in order to kill the black magic, and and then Inter won the title the last day of the season. It was the one where Zlatan scored those the 2 goals. So yeah, no need to run over any black cats this week.
Oh, geez. Right, let's go on to the Bologna game. That Inter playing 2 home games, if I'm not mistaken, is both against both at home. It doesn't really matter. It's in front. All we're treated to is the cursing by Antonio Conte anyway, or Romelu Lukaku losing his marbles against Victor Moses, which made me laugh a lot.
That was great. I did actually notice that. I don't know if this was just this game specific, or whether it'll become a more pronounced trend over the next few weeks. But I did notice that at San Siro, I thought you could pick up the players' voices a lot better than at other grounds I've been watching. Because I thought the Parma game, you couldn't quite hear the shouting so much, whereas against Sassuolo, I could hear Andrea Consigli's every word at set pieces as Sassuolo were barking out instructions to his players. So that's one good thing that's come out of that. You can actually hear these sort of gems, like as Conte was saying, and as Nima was saying about Lukaku.
Lukaku losing on Victor Moses was absolute gold. Right, it's one for the ages. So what are we? I mean, okay, so Inter, we're all agreeing that Inter are going to win against Brescia, even with the all stars. So never mind that. Never mind that. So no need to talk about that. But what about the Bologna game? Because I sense a little bit of a banana skin here as well. Because Mihajlovic, he's not the best coach in the world, but he knows how to trick. He can cause problems for them. And Inter struggled in the reverse fixture away before Valentino Lazaro. Remember him? He came on and changed that game. So Mo, you're Mr. Positivity. Give us some positivity. I'm not positive going into that game.
No, I'm definitely not positive going into that game. I just think I think it might be a case of lesson learned from Sassuolo and Parma. I think any team that wants to frustrate Conte will try that. Pacey wide men up front, quick transitions, etc., blah blah blah. So I would imagine that Conte will have prepared sufficiently and realized that the importance of the Bologna game. I think at the end of the day, much has been made of the Parma the Parma comeback. I think the Sassuolo match was definitely Inter's to lose. We lost absolutely between Ashley Young's contribution and Gagliardini's miss. It was not a bad game. It was a sloppy. It was an unfortunate defensive game. It was an uncontrolled defensive game. It was poor starting lineup selection, but overall, it wasn't a bad game over the 90 minutes. I think the Parma game was a direct consequence of that, but I think the positivity that the team has accumulated in goodwill from the Parma game is sufficient to easily handle Brescia and then subsequently dispatch with Bologna. So I'm trying to be objective here, but I can't see past 6 points. God help me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, where are you on this, Will?
Yeah, I agree. Brescia should be a relatively straightforward game. I wonder if Conte's ever going to arrest Lukaku, then it's in that kind of game that he needs to do it. We'll find out from his team selection. I suspect he probably won't. The Bologna game is tougher. Mihajlovic obviously won. This was Mihajlovic's first game at Bologna last season when we had the thrilling spectacle of Andrea Ranocchia going up front for the last few minutes just before the Icardi stuff really started. A couple of weeks later, that was in the middle of the. I was probably the lowest, one of the worst matches that we played last season under Spalletti. But so I hope that doesn't happen again. It's a tough match. Bologna, as you said, gave us a good game in the first game. But the problem I have with predicting these games is that, we've talked about a lot of tactical and maybe physical issues that were highlighted by these last two games. But the Parma game really seemed to me like gave me the impression that this team has kind of given up a bit. after realizing that they couldn't win the Scudetto. And we've seen this in previous seasons where Inter have realized they can't obtain their objective, and they've kind of detached themselves from the rest of the season, and they've turned in these very slow performances that don't make sort of any sense given what we've seen for the previous 6 months. So I'm not massively optimistic in terms of the rest of the season. I hope it was just a sort of a sluggish day that was turns out to be a bit of a blip, because against Bologna you're not going to be able to play like that. You will be shown up by these teams. So it's a bit of an unknown quantity, but I hope they find the motivation within themselves to keep going, because even if the first place is now looking very difficult, I would like to finish second, because that would be at least something to cling on to in terms of visible progress under Conte. But most importantly of all, I do not want to finish behind Giampiero Gasperini and Atalanta for the second season running, because he will keep talking about that for months and months on end. He was already asked before we came back, my objective for the rest of the season is to overhaul Inter, and you just know he would love it. And so, a third consecutive fourth place finish would be depressing. So I'm glad that we're not in a scrap to qualify for the Champions League, because I think the win yesterday pretty much secures it, along with Roma's defeat to Milan. The gap's now 13 points, so that should be fine. But I want to finish second. I want these games to mean something. So I hope that we see some motivation and some intensity and some oomph, because that's what was missing from these last two games. I just got the sense that they'd kind of dropped their heads a bit after what happened in midweek.
So, Carlo, what do you think is going to happen against Bologna?
Yeah, just to carry on that point from Will, the last game of the season Inter have is against Atalanta, so that'll definitely be a tasty final game if there's something to play for. They're playing for third place or second place. But the Bologna game, Bologna is definitely a potential banana skin. I'd put them on a similar kind of level to Parma, really. Similar kind of game as well, in that they've got some nippy kind of outside forwards, like Musa Barrow and Sansone and Orsolini. So they've got talent. They've got some talented players there, unlike Brescia, who literally have nothing. I mean, they've got Tonali, who's playing with 10 players who are just like levels below him in terms of ability. There's nothing up front. So yeah, but Bologna is definitely, they've got to keep an eye on that game. And that's why I think Conte would do well to rest Lukaku against Brescia. Try and rest a few players in that game, so that they're fresh for the Bologna game. Because Bologna, with Mihajlovic as coach, they won't be able to just turn up and win that game. They will have to put in the effort, because he will give them a game. Mihajlovic, he always demands, a loss out of his players.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'll join and say 6 points as well. I think against Brescia it will be angst, and I will win, but it won't be pretty. And I think against Mihajlovic will look better than against Brescia, and they'll win that one as well. But it'll be better than Parma and Brescia, but it won't be pretty. That's where I am on those. Right, let's move on to the part of the show where we pay tribute, rip the piss out of, and criticize someone or something heavily in the world of football, starting with the negativity. This week's Moggi by our resident Moggi, Mr. Carlo Garganese.
Well, okay. Well, the Moggi of the week, I think I'm going to have to go with Diego Godin. I mean, he's been, one of the best defenders of the last decade, an absolute stalwart for Atletico Madrid. And, this season, Inter signed him on a Bosman. A lot of people were immediately saying that he was the signing of the season. Inter was signing a world-class defender. And, he's really been, virtually a disaster really for Inter. He's only made 13 starts in Serie A. He's lost his place in the team, and even when he does get a chance now, he really struggles. And he didn't. There's no game that he struggled more than the game against Parma. I mean, he was really torn apart by Gervinho and Kulusevski. And there was one moment in the first half where Gervinho just completely left him for dead, and it was quite sad to watch. Really, to watch a great player. It kind of reminded me of like Lothar Matthäus at Euro 2000 when Georgie Hadji, who was like 35 himself, like completely left him for dead. And it's sad to see when you see a great player who's past his best and really getting humiliated like that. So he's my Moggi of the week.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't go with Gagliardini because that misses. Yeah, I mean, it's just you imagine you play football all your life. No, never mind. Right, let's move on to something. Let's move on to something much more comical. This week's frog, which we presented by Mr. Billiam Beckman.
È clamoroso! Autogol di Ranocchia!
Yes, the frog of the week is Hamburg, because they have very gracefully reminded us that actually it's not only Inter that do stupid things and put their fans through the ringer. Hamburg obviously were, until a couple of years ago, were the only team to have never been relegated from the Bundesliga when it was formed in 1963. They had a clock in their stadium that chronicled exactly how long it had been in terms of how long they've been in the Bundesliga. They obviously went down a couple of years ago. Last year, they were in the promotion/playoff spots for 26 out of 34 match days and ended up finishing fourth, 1 point outside the promotion playoff spot. And this year, they were in the top three for 30 out of 34 match days. And they ended up in exactly the same place, fourth, with 1 point separating them from a potential promotion playoff spot. They did it in quite a dramatic fashion, though, in a very sort of Inter-esque fashion, very similar to what we almost did last season when we nearly missed out on the top four. They had a head-to-head match last week against Heidenheim, who were the team that were below them. They only needed to get a point to keep everything in their own hands heading into the last game. They took the lead, were leading with 10 minutes left, and then they conceded a 96th minute winner. So they lost that one 2-1 and therefore went into the final day not with their destiny in their own hands. So that meant that on Saturday they needed Heidenheim to slip up and for them to win. Heidenheim did lose, therefore opening the door for Hamburg. But instead of Hamburg winning, they did a sort of an Inter Sassuolo from a couple of years ago when Sassuolo had nothing to play for and came and won. They lost to SV Sandhausen, who I've never heard of, and they lost 5-1. And not only did they lose 5-1, the person who scored their fifth goal was a guy called Dennis Diekmeyer, who was a defender who apparently played for Hamburg more than 200 times in the Bundesliga and never scored once. So it really is like sort of Inter conceding to Samuel Ilongo all those years ago, or that person that you thought could never hurt you, in fact turns up and has his day. So in a week when we've welcomed back somewhat begrudgingly this notion of Pazza Inter, which we thought we might have banished at least for a little while. I think it's only worth reminding us that there are a couple of teams, not many, but there are a couple of other teams out there who are capable of doing the same sort of stupid things.
Sure. Let's move on to something much more positive. This week's Moratti, which we presented by Mr. Marvin.
He works a lot, he's intelligent, and he surprises people sometimes with his ideas. Not easy to find one person of this qualities.
Yeah, my Moratti this week is the 10-second sequence that you alluded to earlier, Nima. Probably the best thing about football all week long, which started off by Moses getting the ball, trying to cut back to Lukaku. The ball gets blocked. Lukaku is absolutely free on the far post. Goes absolutely mental on the mic. Fucking hell, Victor, or Victor fucking hell. I can't remember
Victor,
what.
Fucking hell.
Victor fucking hell. Exactly. But then cut to Antonio Conte in the stands, absolutely writhing in his seat, almost crying. in pain at the shambolic breakdown of the attack, and it was at that moment, when I figured Conte finally understood what Inter means, what Pazza Inter means, what being an Inter supporter is. It was at that moment in particular at which I realized that this is the right man for us. He's been put through the ring.
He's one of us now.
He's one of us now.
That was the image of the week. Everyone could relate.
The anguish in his
agony
soul,
on his face.
The man has spent a lifetime winning without suffering. 9 months it took for Inter to break him to a shell of a man that he once was. Almost crying.
The embodiment of arrogance and control on the sideline. Always barking orders to like you say, like
a shell of a man. He's completely destroyed. Like that GIF is to me that is what Inter does to you. Nothing explains. Like he's close to tears. He's angry. He's fed up with life. Like he's really like he wants to creep out of his skin. I mean, that was
honestly. It's those 10 seconds that make me so optimistic about the rest of the season. He gets it. He gets it now.
Antonio Conte, he gets it.
That's the title of this one.
Yeah. The good thing about him being in the stands is that it's given him a chance to rest his voice for the next match. I think in the Sassuolo game, he'd pretty much lost it altogether. So hopefully he's recharged. He needs to recharge his batteries as well.
Porca troia, è la vita, è la vita. È la vita. Porca troia. And the thing is, you can't. It is him because that dialect is. You recognize it. It's brilliant. Right. On that note, hashtag territorial discrimination. Let's move on. I want to thank you, Carlo, for coming on.
No, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy it as always, guys.
And as always, Mo, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, always a pleasure. It was great being on to speak.
Yes, and you too, Mr. Billiam.
Thank you. I'm never telling you a childhood anecdote again. If this is how you're going to treat them, stream them out across the entire episode.
What? Right. To a total of 5 listeners? I mean, come on. Yeah. It's all right. It's as good as a secret.
Right. Let's. That was all we had time for this week. My name is Nima Tavale Ruzzari, wishing you 6 points, good week, and sempre e solo Forza Inter. Pazza Inter,